So Brian Kilmeade, again, it's like, that's all it is that each one of these Fox and Friends, they have one friend. And everything that they comment on is a function of that one friend telling them that. For Ainsley Earhart, everything it comes from this woman who has a chicken salad like franchise. And Brian Kilmeade clearly knows somebody, maybe it's his brother or whoever, has a small business and is pissed about these loans. Here he is talking to Lindsey Graham, trying to get some action on this. This is Brian Kilmeade on Fox and Friends.
We got to fix this loan program. I don't mean to change topics, but the 75-25 split needs to change. And there are people applying for this small business loan that really are liquid as they can be, and they're taking advantage of it. The money should be for Main Street. And some people are abusing this system.
Yeah,
you can't keep employees. Yeah, you can't keep employees if they have no owner. People have to remember there has to be an owner and employees, not just employees. I don't know what it takes to get through these people.
What he's saying is that what he is saying is that the money, they have to give money more than 25% to the owner. Now, here's the thing.
Gotcha.
The loan is this. You can get a loan for any number that you want. You can apply for the loan. What they will forgive in terms of basically giving you a grant, theoretically, is, to my understanding, 10 weeks worth of payroll and rent. Right. And I'm not sure how they calculate payroll. Maybe it includes the benefits. I think maybe it includes benefits for in terms of healthcare and stuff like that. And maybe it includes like taxes. I'm not sure. But the gist of it is, we're going to pay you. We're going to give you the money to pay your employees for 10 weeks and your rent for 10 weeks. And Kilmeade is upset because apparently, like, maybe you're only allowed another 25% after that it presumably goes into the pocket of the owner, right? Maybe there's some other costs. Maybe they took out a big loan and they need to service that loan or whatnot. But he hates the idea that this is going to workers.
It's insane.
Yeah, I mean, we can't have workers running around in the world without any owners. Someone's got to own them.
Filter there.
And then the amazing thing is that Lindsey Graham is the same guy who complains about if you were to fire those people,
right,
that they would get any type of money to basically bring them whole on the unemployment side. He's the one who complained about the extra $600 a week on unemployment,
right? Because
unemployment doesn't pay you 100% of what you had. So, like, he is basically squeezing on both sides. Not a word about the $450 billion and then the $4 trillion that are being leveraged to corporate America. Not a word about the $50 billion. You're an airline? Boom. We don't even need an application. Here's the money. That's basically it.
It's like those, how Neil Cavuto on the Business Channel, he was famous for having people on to, talking about the hamster wheel studies and, oh, look at all this waste. And it's 0.0000001%, but let's end the program. I mean, it's just the same tactics over and over.
This concept of waste is, I think, the thing that that I've been thinking about in the context of what we're going through right now, the idea of waste and the idea of externalities. When they got rid of the head of the pandemic response team who sat on the National Security Council, when they got rid of the head of the pandemic response who sat in Department of Homeland Security, when they got rid of the CDC people who were embedded in China, who were there specifically to look for pandemics as a early warning system, when they got rid of the entire team in China, they were basically saying, like, this is waste.
Yeah.
Because
that's the argument they made.
Because we're not using it.
Right.
And like the idea, this is insurance. It's social insurance is basically what it is. Mm-hmm. And this idea of waste that we need to have, like, so many of our problems that we're going to experience, that we're experiencing now and we're going to experience over the next year, is a function of this hypersensitivity to waste. That is why we have a just-in-time supply lines, which is going to mean that we don't have the ability. There's nothing in the system that is sitting there for any period of time, which means we're going to have shortages. It means that we it's a just-in-time supply line is the metaphor for not having a pandemic response team. Like the pandemic response team just sits there. They don't do anything until there's a pandemic. And then they save you trillions of dollars, but they could go for 20 years or 40 years and do nothing that benefits society other than providing this insurance policy for when you'll ultimately need it. That's what Medicare for All is. That's what a social, a structure that exists with a social, support system, so that when society runs into these things, as a society, you can recover much more easily. And it's the same with individuals. When individuals run into these situations, you can recover much more easily. You cannot stop a pandemic necessarily. You can mitigate it, but you can't stop its existence. You can't stop the existence of the coronavirus, but you can structure society in a way that it's not a shock. It's not a trauma to the society, one that's going to reverberate for generations. And I think, we're going to come out of this with a greater understanding of that. And it's going to be much harder to make this argument. And, the question is like, who is flexible enough in their thinking to be able to make this turn? And I am not terribly encouraged that Joe Biden is that flexible, but maybe he is. I mean, I like the idea that he pivoted on some level, like we can't return to this. I mean, at least he's saying the words, which is better than not saying the words.
There's also the other aspect of it is, okay, so you have a pandemic, and I mean, Trump obviously knew about this pandemic in late last year, and he chose actively to double down on cutting funding and rejecting any sort of assistance, knowing very well, because they knew the signs going in that it was very similar to some of the scenarios with SARS. And I mean, the WHO was doing the work. Like they were providing the research and the evidence. And I think many people would probably say at this point, his mind automatically goes to, how can I make a buck off of this? And so I'm going to reject the gear and figure out who can, if My Pillow guy or Jared Kushner or whatever their investment strategy is, it's such mental gymnastics to get there. And I don't think he still figured it out. But there's the rejection and there's the intentional austerity, not because we can't afford it, but because it's waste. And that's the argument that Republicans make when they go on Fox News. And then there's, how do I make a buck off of it? And then on top of it, there's the other, the disaster capitalism aspect, which is, how do I make a buck off of the effects of austerity and the crisis that's hit communities across the country.
I'm convinced.
Never let a good crisis go to waste, right?
Yes,
exactly.
I'm convinced that's what it was about with the testing. I'm convinced that's what it was with the testing. We would have had this testing.